Morning. I really do need to take a deep breath and I do need to center myself. You would not believe we're doing some remodeling in our home studio, moving some things around. And as I went in to get dressed this morning, the whole closet fell. And some of you know how many clothes I have. I mean, if you saw me standing here, I'm literally just in a shirt and a pair of undershorts. But we're here today, and I'm glad you're here with me. So, as the music plays, let us become mindful. Today, my talk is going to be Hi, my name is. I'm going to talk about the importance of our name, okay? So, for just a moment, let's take a deep breath. All the clothes that are on the floor will be there when I finish. The hangers won't be where I'm going to have to redo everything. But you know, right now I'm so thankful that I have clothes. There are so many people that don't have clothes. I'm so thankful that I have shoes. Yes, lots of them, but so many people don't have shoes. I'm so grateful that the wind isn't blowing through my place and the rain isn't pouring through. So much to be grateful for. Dear God of many names, in this moment, there is no past and there is no future. There's only this moment. And in this present moment, let us simply bask in the divine love that you are and that we are. And so it is. So it is. So I may be moving things around as I talk today, but that's okay, right? Yeah, now you see me really up close and personal. There we go. There we go. Couple announcements for you. Next Sunday, I will be with the Interfaith Ministries Worldwide at the Leisure Center Community Room in Palm Springs. And usually the last Sunday of the month, I speak, and it starts at 10. But this coming Sunday, I'm doing a workshop called Healing of Childhood Traumas. And the first half hour, I'm going to be talking about my own experience. We're going to go into a workshop to begin to see how to rid and how to work through childhood traumas. Because whatever you don't heal from your childhood, you carry into your adulthood. And believe me, most of the time, it's into those romantic relationships. We end up having the same relationship with a different person, but it's actually the same person, the same energy, unless we learn how to heal it. So that's going to be starting at 9:30 at the community room at the Leisure Center in Palm Springs. It's by the swimming pool. Fleet's going to be there. He's going to sing a wonderful song to start out called My Prayer, which is one of my favorite. Then we're just going to go into a very easy flowing. So if you know anybody that needs healing in their mentals or in the emotions, please have them come next Sunday. It's going to be a terrific service. Your name matters. Your name is the name that most people call you by, and the first thing when they meet you, what is your name? The most important thing about somebody's name is it's their identify. It's how you identify, it's how you refer to somebody. Names are closely associated with reputations. Donald Trump's, um, sports figures, um, Bill Cosby, etc., etc. You know what I'm talking about. And In many instances, the origins of the names that have come from our parents are closely related to instances that have happened in their life or unusual circumstances that have been around our birth. And sometimes names can be used to point the future. Do you know, when Jesus received his name, and Matthew 1:23 says, "Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us. So Emmanuel, God with us. And certainly Jesus the Christ was God in the flesh, as we have God in the flesh. Jesus, I call him my elder brother, my hero, my role model. And in similar ways, sometimes parents choose certain names because they have hopes and aspirations for their children. It's important to understand the value of your name. It is important to understand that all names have significance. Do you know, when a baby's born, one of the biggest events in the parent's life is choosing the name? Chloe, one of our news commentators here, I had to smile and I laughed because on air she said, "I want you to send babies' names so that I can choose babies' names." We all want input from deciding the names of the birth of a child. It's a big celebration. And a lot of times, what goes into choosing the first name of the first boy is that it's the grandfather's name or the great grandfather's name. And then maybe it's the parental father's name. And then if it's a girl, it's maybe the paternal mother's name or the paternal grandmother's name. And all of these things affect the names. Now, people actually research names. Research tells us that names may even tell us more about social backgrounds. They affect future decisions. Names affect marriages. Names affect careers. Brett Palin, who studied hundreds of thousands of names, said that they significantly can affect your life, even the profession that you enter. Isn't that interesting? Some researchers have found an unusual association between names of certain people, and certain people with certain names have similar personalities. They even go as far as say that even though they might not be related, there are certain energetic qualities that they may have. Now, in 1948, and I know I'm using an old study, but there's several studies that have been done since this. Two Harvard professors published a study of 3,300 men who had recently graduated and looking at whether their names had any bearing on their academic performance, right? These men had unusual names. The study found that the more likely the more their name was unusual, the more likely they were to flunk out. Interesting. And recent psychologist David Frigo of Northwestern University of Illinois said a baby name can leave a long-lasting imprint on their lives, better or worse. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Stephen Bruce Ford. In fact, Stephen Bruce will be with us next Sunday and share some of his victory over childhood traumas. Not a victim, but a victor. Stephen was born on January 30th, 1950. He was left at the hospital by his mother. And his name, Stephen, came from a derelict, alcoholic, a drunk that hung out at his grandfather's gas station. And his name, Bruce, actually was the name of the milkman. Stephen had an older brother named Charles Lee. Charles for the grandfather. No, Charles for the father and Lee for the grandfather. So he was the fair-haired one. But he was born with a brain tumor, so he got all of the attention. And when Steve came home from the hospital, he came home not to loving parents, but he came home to grandparents that were already had a plate full with a paralyzed child, with an aged mother living with them. So he never felt that he belonged. Any of you understand that feeling? I do. He never felt like he belonged. And most of his life, he longed for this a place to belong, somebody to belong to. He didn't understand that first you have to belong to yourself before you can belong to somebody else. So Stephen flitted around in life, made decisions, some good, some not so good, and lived a very lonely life, even in the midst of people. I'll be talking a little bit more about him in a few minutes. Hi, I am. That's the title of my talk today. Do you know, the scriptures tells us that God often gave new names to people, and the names reflected a new start in life. It reflected new goals, new aspirations, or maybe a new mission, or maybe a new purpose. I'm not going to read these scriptures, but I'm going to just give them to you for reference, like Genesis 17, Genesis 32, and Matthew 16, and Mark 3. You can look them up about the name changes. When God, Creator, changes a name, it indicates that something new has happened or will happen to that person. A new relationship, a new character quality, a new phase in life. We see that most of the time in biblical times, the names were very intentional. It was often saying something about the character or their situation. For instance, King David's name means beloved, and he was known as a man after God's own heart. And then we have the story of Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau over the birthright. You can read this story, but Jacob was to face his brother after all his trickery. And he was afraid that Esau was going to seek revenge on him. You can read that in Genesis 22. And Genesis 22 puts it this way. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives and his 2 female servants, 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jacob. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him. And when the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob so that his hip was wrenched. And as he wrestled with the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go until you bless me." And the man asked him, "What is your name?" Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob became Israel. A story maybe that you're a little more familiar with is imagine being a fisherman. Imagine being Simon, one of the many fishermen on the Sea of Galilee. Imagine going from a fisherman to being a pillar in the church. I mean, that would be a life-changing experience. Simon means he has heard or to listen. Probably a good description of somebody that spent most of their time on the sea. But everything changed one day when his brother brought him to meet Jesus. And Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, son of John. You'll be called Cephas, which means translated Peter. John 1:42. Peter. St. Peter's Basilica, the Catholic Church, the church built upon the apostles of Peter. Your name matters. I told you we'd go back to Stephen.
She started out working in the ER, so Karen Bass knows how to turn a crisis into a comeback.
I told you we'd go back to Stephen. Maybe 35 years ago, maybe a little longer. My name was Stephen. I was that person that knew such loneliness, such despair. I didn't know what to do. I was a gospel singer at the time. I was in church at the time. You know, if you're a Christian, you don't do things like change your name. And I was on the docket to be one of the singers at a concert at the Oakland Auditorium in Oakland, California. And whether it's gospel music or secular music, artist are artist, and everybody has an ego. The lighting isn't right, the sound isn't right, bicker. Oh, could you play this again? Oh, let me be the... Okay, so rehearsal went that way. A group on the docket was called the Hawaiians. A lot of fussing going on. A lot of arrogance. A lot of frustration, anxiety. A lot of ego. And this woman walked into the room in her muumuu, one of the Hawaiians. She did not speak a word. She did not gesture. Her very presence, in her presence, you knew you were loved. In her presence, you knew if you needed forgiveness, you weren't judged just by her presence. The woman's name, you guessed it, was Damien. In that moment, my friends, I said, that's for me. That's for me. I want to live my life. Remember, I'm talking about hi, my name is. I want to live my life. And I proceeded to go through legal process to change my life to only one name, which was Damien. And I pressed in and I began to study. I began to align my life more. I began to search. I was hungry to live my life out loud. I came across, if there is such a thing, everything's in divine plan. I came across a mind course. It's not a religious course, although it uses religious terms, called A Course in Miracles. And in A Course in Miracles, one of the things it teaches us is this: our job is not to seek love. Let me say that again. Our job is not to seek love. Our job is to remove all barriers and blockages that keep us from knowing and giving and receiving love. I got it intellectually, but did I still run after love at times? Oh, yeah. Have I at times? Oh, yeah. Do I err? Yeah. But am I conscious of what my purpose is? My purpose is to be the expression of love on this planet. My mission is to be the expression of God on this planet. And when I look at my name and I say, hi, my name is Damien, even when I'm skeltering around and acting up and acting out and maybe thinking, rather than being love, I'm in the lust factor. Just when I stop and say, my name is Damien, it brings me a moment of quality and, and a moment of realization. That's who I am. Who I am. That when I walk into a room, the people's thirst for life is quenched. When I walk into a room, light shines and not darkness. Oh, have I brought darkness? Hello. But when I stop and I say my name, and it begins to bring the light again. Hi, my name is Damien. From Stephen to Damien. It's been a journey and is still a journey. But in this journey, the thing that I know is that God is in control of my life. I know that God knows me intimately and loves me completely. On this journey, I know that God, universe, has a specific work for me to do. On this journey, I know that God desires to move me out from my past into a greater future. Yes, even at 75 or 3 years old, to a better future of more understanding. On this journey, name change, God wants me to keep my eyes on Him and His plan. No matter what name I may be known as in this world, I want to represent God's will. I want to represent who God is. Sometimes we try to live up to our names. Sometimes we try to run away from them. I wasn't running away from Stephen Bruce Ford. I just couldn't identify with who that was. Everybody had a purpose for him except me. Your name. Your name, critical factor in developing your sense of self. Your name helps you propel forward on various paths of life and a career. Who are you? Who are you? Who do you want to be? Dhammago Reese in the Four Agreements talks about how we come to this world and we're domesticated. You came here with a gift. And so often we play small because of other people's expectations. When I changed my name, my grandmother was still alive. I wanted to be respectful. I went and told her that I was changing my name. She did not understand it. People will not always understand what you do. And I said, Grandma, you call me by the name that you feel comfortable calling me. Some of you on Facebook knew me 50 years ago when I used to sing in music groups and when I used to tour. And when I see you in person occasionally, you say, hey, Steve, how are you? What's going on? Or when I talk to you on the phone, I don't stop and say, well, my name is Damien. The name that you are comfortable calling me, I answer to. But the name, the I am name, is I am Damien. You ask about the last name. You didn't ask, but I'll tell you. For, probably 30 years, I only had one legal name, and that was Damien. We didn't have computers when I changed it, not big ones where you needed things, and they would have me listed as Damien, or NLN, no last name, Damien, or NFN, no first name, Damien, or D, Damien. But the legal name on driver's license, Social Security was Damien. And I kept that because my dream was to meet somebody one day and I would take their name and I would belong to them. That was my thinking. So I met someone and I hastily, hastily, the sex is good, so you think you're going to put a ring on it, okay? Hastily, without even knowing the person or really myself, became married. I don't believe in mistakes. It was a learning experience. And I took their last name because I felt like by taking their last name, I was making a commitment to the marriage. And then when the divorce happened, it was too much trouble to change the last name. And by that time, I had changed my school records and I had built a reputation as Reverend Dr. Damien Calment. So what I've learned on this journey of names am Damien. There is someone that I very much love right now. I'm not trying to be, I simply am. In other words, no matter what you call yourself, you've got to have you. You've got to love you. You've got to love you and who you are before you can actually love somebody else. I hear people say, oh, he completes me or she completes me. It's a wonderful romantic thought. But you've got to complete yourself. Here in this moment in time, I am whole. I am whole. I do not look for me in another person. I am whole, so I ask, what do I bring to the table for this other person who is also whole? How can we share together in God's love? How can we share together for the sake of being God expressed on the planet? Don't forget next Sunday. There's a lot more to this story. We'll get to some of the details next Sunday in our in-person service. Leisure Center by the swimming pool at the community room starting at 9:30. Healing childhood trauma. It's going to be my workshop. And until then, as I say in every single talk I do, kindness, my friends, kindness is the language that the deaf can hear. Kindness is the language the blind can see. Be kind to yourself and be kind to each other.